14, household hazardous waste.
Okay, any other additions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we have consideration for the draft minutes from August 10th committee of the whole meeting.
Motion to approve draft minutes.
Support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, distribution and review of overnight travel requests, grant applications, and budget amendments should be coming around. If anybody has any questions on those, please let us know. Department head updates. Any department heads here this morning like to give us an update?
Good morning. Just a few kind of highlights I wanted to share with the board and with the community here. We had two jury trials, two large jury trials. This week, the first involved a defendant that was charged with sexual assault on a teenage girl. He was charged with 2 counts of CSC first degree. I'm happy to report the jury deliberated for only 17 minutes before finding him guilty. This is a 2020 case, and it involves an assault that occurred about 6 to 10 years ago. So those of you that don't have a lot of experience with this, those are probably the toughest CSC cases to try. The defendant will be sentenced in October to a 25-year mandatory minimum sentence. So that was a big win for the public and for our office. We also had a second neglect and abuse trial involving a toddler that was shaken so hard that the child became permanently blind. These are some of the really tough cases that our office handles. I'm happy to report that we were successful in terminating the parents' rights. The defendant that was responsible for the harm to the child was charged with 2 counts of CSC second degree, or neglect and abuse second degree, and he has pled guilty to that, and he will be sentenced on October 23rd. That's kind of a segue into some other things that you've heard me discuss before involving kind of the backlog of jury trials that I'm trying to foreclose, and one of those was the 2020 case that I just updated you on. And I think last time I spoke, I was forecasting that we'd be done with 2019 cases by the end of this year. We've got a few more old ones that are creeping up. For the next 5 to 6 weeks, we have jury trials scheduled every single week. And some of those trials involve, for example, the Clark gas station shooting, that homicide case is going to be tried on October 4th. How the court typically schedules these things, they schedule kind of a primary trial and then a secondary trial, a backup trial, if you will. What we're trying to accomplish is when we have a primary trial go forward, and this backup trial or secondary trial is kind of in the background, we're trying to hold the line on those and spin that off to Judge Hodges. He's been happy to accommodate those trials, and we've done that a couple of times. It's created a few issues, though, and how we kind of do our business of conducting jury trials. It involves the clerk office and the court. And Clerk Spencer and I and Judge Nolan had a meeting a few weeks ago and talked about this issue. But I want you to kind of be aware of it too, because you guys can help us fix this issue if it comes to fruition. And the issue becomes we have smaller jury pools. So when we have this many trials, we're going through jurors. And if we have a criminal sexual conduct case like we had this week, and then we have another criminal sexual conduct trial next week, we can't call the same jury pool, because they've already heard some voir dire and heard things about CSC, and there's a lot of information that's kind of generalized in a voir dire or jury selection process. So we kind of run into the issue where we're running out of jurors on a monthly rotation, because I think you know my philosophy is pedal to the metal on these things. Let's get this work done. So that's creating some issues that we're working through with the clerk's office and the courts. And I mentioned previously too, kind of food for thought about utilizing the old courthouse and having that ready, because what we can't do right now, and if you ever saw, and I mentioned Judge Hodges' courtroom, and I encourage you to go just take a peek in there and see how small that courtroom really is. And imagine trying to stuff 14 jurors in that jury box. It's so small you can't have it. You can't fit 14 jurors. We need 2 alternates for these trials in case someone's involved in a car accident, or someone gets sick, or has to care for a family member. That's why we have alternate jurors. And I mentioned utilizing some funding to upgrade the historic courthouse so that we could have our spin-off trials there, or even lead trials there, because it's a large courtroom. We've all been in there. And it has a jury box that's sufficient to accommodate that number of people. And it probably has the biggest gallery, the biggest audience seating. So when we go through that voir dire process, you can't even get, and if it's we go through that voir dire process, there's plenty of seating there to accommodate everyone. Right now in Judge Hodges' courtroom, there's not enough seating to accommodate 2 jury panels. There's barely enough seats when we get 2 full jury panels in Judge Nolan's courtroom, which is the largest courtroom that is the most functioning and most utilized courtroom for criminal jury trials at the circuit court level now. So what I would like to do is probably present some ideas through the properties committee and get those ideas in front of that committee and utilize some, work with buildings and grounds on how we can try to come up with a plan to make that a feasible alternative to conduct jury trials in the historic courthouse. We touted it as the oldest functioning courthouse in Michigan. It worked for 100 years for jury trials. I think we should put it back to work if we need space. And it really relieves that congestion. If we have a backup trial and both of them end up going forward, the primary and the secondary trial, both of them go forward, what we've done historically is to adjourn one of those. We really don't want to do that. All we're doing is kicking the can down the road farther. I'm going to have the staff, my new prosecutor is going to start on the 25th. This is the young man I spoke of that's from New Mexico with roots in Michigan. And he's going to start on the 25th of this month. It'll take us some time to get him onboarded and accustomed to local court rules and local state laws. Once we do that, though, I'll have sufficient number of prosecutors that I won't need to worry about adjourning cases because we don't have enough people that can handle those serious felony charges. So more food for thought. But like I said, what I'd like to do is to push that through to committee and maybe form a plan that we can all think is a fruitful plan to go forward with jury trials with. So I'm happy to report good news to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other department heads like to give an update this morning?
Teresa Spencer, County Clerk. I hadn't planned to add to Prosecutor Miller's presentation, but everything he says is so very accurate with regard to managing juries and getting enough jurors to fit the need of the circuit courts. So yeah, just to let you know, and we typically call in 2 panels, which would be 45 people per panel. Sometimes we don't have those full numbers because of illness or other circumstances, but we put them in the jury assembly room on the first floor and then try to manage them into the circuit court rooms on the second floor. So someday if you're in on a Tuesday morning is typically when we orient jurors. We'd love to have you sit through the orientation and also see the turnout. I think I've mentioned before when we are introducing the jurors to the room, to what is going to happen with regard to a pre-recorded orientation and so on. The last thing I like to ask them is, how many of you, if this is the first time you've been in the building? And it's typical, about half of the people, this is their first exposure to the county complex. So that I always find that interesting. And I always tell them it's their building because we are the taxpayers. So anyway, but my real reason to come before you is to give you an update what's been happening with regard to plans for the 9 days of early voting. Proposal 2, constitutional amendment, requires every throughout Michigan to provide our citizens, registered voters, 9 days of early voting starting in 2024. So there's been all kinds of work being done throughout the legislature and then at the Secretary of State and Bureau of Elections level. I spoke to the property subcommittee about, I didn't really know what that was going to look like. Talked to them last month because there are different plans that we have to prepare for. So I'm here to tell you what the plan is for at least the presidential primary. We can always amend the plans going forward if need be. But the Bureau of Elections really urged that counties would either, one, be the county coordinator at one site, or that there would be regional early voting sites. The whole reason is to try to save the asset that was going to be needed for all of the local jurisdictions, because there's going to be a need for a dedicated tabulator and other dedicated machines to run those each day of the 9 days of early voting. So we being myself, my staff, and all of the local jurisdictions, the 2 cities and 18 townships, all of the clerks I got to talk through it to see what was going to work, because we needed to work for their residents, we needed to work for the county, we needed to meet the constitutional requirements. So what I have here is a copy. I waited to talk till this back. Copy of the countywide early voting plan. This was required to be submitted to the Bureau of Elections to tell the state what Lapeer County is going to do. So when you have a chance to come through it, just a snapshot is we have a couple of jurisdictions that are joined together and work through one of the township locations or the city locations to provide voting. We have one jurisdiction that is able and willing to, and that's Deerfield Township, that is willing to take several jurisdictions and run that early voting out of that site. For Deerfield Township, I really appreciate the local clerk, Deb Oliver, being able and willing to do that. Deerfield Township Hall is located on State Highway 24, and many people that come from our more rural townships pass right through Deerfield Township. So we're going to be having that as our main, taking a lot of jurisdictions and running the early voting out of Deerfield Township. Again, this is all new to all of us. We're doing the best we can with pre-planning, and also along with submitting this to the state of Michigan, I requested them to give us some funding for some of those machines that are going to have to be purchased by all of the locals. So they accepted that application for the funds. They accepted our early voting plan, and I'm just waiting to hear what else is required of my office or of any of the local jurisdictions as we go forward. Again, this is going to take place starting in 2024 in perpetuity until the Constitution changes again. So I don't expect that's going to happen, but anyway. Any questions?
Yeah, so municipal agreement 1 and 2, I'm assuming the first, like the city of Inlay City and township of Inlay, so city of Inlay City is going to be the host.
That's
Those
what
two?
we believe so,
Okay,
because
so the
of
top
their,
one.
yeah, because of their size of their hall, basically, and everybody knows where that is, and so that's what we're planning.
And then
That
city
they
of
would be the
Lapeer.
host site.
Okay.
And city of Lapeer and township of Lapeer probably are going to use Lapeer Township site, because the city of Lapeer at this point, when they hold their elections, they're buying space out of churches. There's 4 precincts in the city of Lapeer. So I believe those 2 clerks are going to utilize Lapeer Township's location. It's easy access with parking, a larger space, so that they can set up their early voting and have their workers.
And then the single municipalities, they're going to be conducting elections as normal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, at their own locations, and again, be available 9 days, 9 to 5, and then of course that's 9 days, and then the 10th day is on regular voting day, election day. So I wanted you all to be aware of what's been going on with this pre-planning and what's been submitted to the Bureau of Elections Commission.
When it comes to the courthouse, what's the single biggest stumbling block preventing jury trials over there?
Basically technology upgrades. Like we use monitors like this in jury trials now, and sound system. So those are the 2 big things that we would need, and internet. So availability for that. I think we can work around some of the other physical constraints of the building. We do have an elevator there, but it would be, we would probably just adopt a policy of the clerk's office. If someone did have a handicap that, prevented them from being able to access that building because there's stairs on both sides to get in it, that we would just alternate them to a jury trial to this building where we could accommodate that. And I think that's a feasible plan. The only other constraints are bathrooms, which we do have bathrooms in the basement of the building. It's not the most convenient, but it's there. But I think that just as if we're gonna use it as an alternative courtroom, I think we can do it with just the technology upgrades.
Has there been any RFPs for the cost to do that?
I just wanted to hatch the plan first and then fall back with buildings and grounds and then have a walkthrough of that courtroom and just make a checklist of everything that we need and then come up with some proposals to try to make it happen and then present those to this commission for consideration.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one for Teresa. So these townships, 9 days of early vote, who's paying for this? Who's paying for it? It's the
The
townships?
Yes.
Speak into the mic, please.
Yes, the townships are paying for it. And that was why we, clerks and myself, wanted to submit to the Bureau to let them know that the heavy load, the expense to, get all of these townships, all of the locations ready and able to conduct this 9 days of early voting, because it takes a dedicated tabulator. That means one just for 9 days of early voting. And then also a setup with our touch screen, which is called the ICX, but also to have a duplexing printer that will do ballot on demand, so that if anybody wants to use the touch screen opportunity to vote, when they're done voting, they can actually print their voted ballot as it appears from the printer, but with their votes placed on it. Because right now, anybody that uses the touch screen opportunity, the printout that is read by the tabulator is a summary of their votes and then a URL coding that the tabulator is programmed to read. So the upgraded opportunities now are going to be for those voters to actually print their ballot and use the screen to touch, which is getting more and more popular in our county. But then when they print, they're going to have their printed ballot to review, just as if they've been distributed one from the printer and go in the voting booth and do the ovals with a pen. So these are changes to accommodate all the needs for 9 days of early voting. And of course, upgraded equipment is a cost. So, and then also the local jurisdictions that are running these sites are going to have adequate election inspectors. So that's a minimum of 3 for those full days for 9 days. And then they'll still be, having staffing for the regular election day, the 10th day, which is a bigger span of hours.
Sure.
So-
And it's gonna be also tying up, like, most of the townships, use their meeting rooms and all that sort of stuff for elections. So they have to reorganize all that.
Absolutely is going to need accommodation for the space, for parking, for signage, and notifying our citizens that this is now available to them. Because as it goes, if you're not in the industry like you and me, you hear a little bit in the news, you think this and that, but really when it gets down to the opportunity of the hours and so on, they're going to have to take extra steps through website, we're going to be doing a publication that's countywide that we do for normal election day to say, here's your clerk, here's the contact, where to go to vote and so on and what's on the ballot. So I'm presuming that will be an additional requirement on for the publications when we get to the presidential primary, which we think is going to be February 27th. Oh, we're not sure. We're not sure until we finish in Lansing. So it might be February 27th, or it might be a date in March.
So the times are set by the state, correct?
For what?
For the early voting?
No.
The 9 to 5?
I do that, so that we have consistency throughout the county. And also, any person, any voter that wants to still utilize the AV, the absent voter ballot, they may do that. And one of the, I think, really positive things about the 9 day of early voting opportunity, so I'm an AV voter. I go to my clerk, they check me out, they see I'm registered, I get my ballot, I go home, I vote my ballot. The way it stands right now, before 9 days of early voting, my only way to know that that was going to be handled was to take it back to the clerk's office, put it in a drop box or mail it in the mail. Then when it arrived at the clerk's office, they would make sure it was legitimate by checking the signature, making sure they issued that to me. Then those ballots were stored in the vaults, various places, until election day. One of the opportunities with 9 days of early voting, if I'm that AV voter, do the process, get checked out, get my ballot from my local clerk, vote my ballot, I'm gonna have the opportunity to visit and the correct 9-day early voting site and actually process my AV ballot through the tabulator right then and there. So with that opportunity, it requires that we have connectivity with our e-poll book at those 9 days of early voting so that they know that's a legitimate issued AV ballot that I'm now going to process. And then once it's processed through the tabulator, you can't retrieve your ballot. It's just you voted. So that's an opportunity for the people who were really, many people came to me after 2020 questioning if their AV ballot was counted. Well, any identifying pieces of the ballot are removed once it's gone through the tabulator. So I couldn't find their ballot. I wouldn't find their ballot. I can only present to them the poll book list to show the name was there and that we balanced in that precinct. So now, if a person really is doubting what happens with their AV ballot, they can take it themselves, feed it through the tabulator, and they're going to know that it's been counted. So one other thing I'd like you to know about that tabulator tape, what I've been told, there will be no votes presented 9 days on the tabulator tape. What it's going to do is show number of ballots counted so that there will be a tie on the balance every night for a number of names in the poll book to ballots counted. So none of the totals will be known until election day, is when those are all brought in and calculated on election day.
That was one of my questions. If you guys were going to print out a tape at the end of every day, but I see if that's done, that kind of gives, each party to say, hey, we're behind or we're ahead.
Right, we can't have it. It's actually a felony to disclose any voted ballots before 8 p.m. on election day. So all of the election workers are sworn. So they're going to be tasked with emptying the ballot container every day, locking up those ballots. So then next day, it's a brand new day of voting in that 9 days. So as it is right now, regular voting, many of the precincts have absent voter counting boards, which those people are sequestered, but they're seeing voted ballots, but they can't leave until 8 p.m. on election day. So there will be some movements and changing because in larger precincts, if it happens in Lansing, which it may, they may be able to transact their AV ballots in advance of election day. So things are changing a little bit, but there are so many safeguards and so many details yet that we're going to be learning and training inspectors on to keep the integrity of the election and the results preserved till close of polls on election day.
So if Michigan has the primary February 27th, can other states still maintain a primary in August?
It's a great question. Well,
Is that
I'm talking,
federal?
I should clarify. The February 27th is a presidential primary. Our August primary and November general election in 2024 have not changed as of this time.
So they just want to change the presidential primary,
Yeah, they're trying to, it depends on when the legislature goes into recess.
and that's up to Michigan. Like other states, do they have to be are all the presidential primaries going to be on the same date?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but I'll research it. I don't know. It's a full-time job for me keeping track of Michigan.
And one other question, do you guys have an idea on the increase in cost to the county? How much early voting, or this 9 days of early voting is going to be on top of what it's costed in the past?
Well, I can tell you that, and these were rough estimates from all of the clerks and what they expected they needed. They have some resources, like they have secrecy sleeves, they have that. Some of them have some of the equipment. None of them have the duplexing printers because that's a new opportunity. That duplexing printer needs to be at the capacity to do a 22-inch ballot. So some of them need new printers. Depends on it's such a variety in our county. North of Lapeer Township, some of those jurisdictions don't even have a township hall. One of them doesn't, and the other one doesn't have offices in their hall. So we're really varied. And then we get down south, and we are more populated. We have larger halls. We have newer halls. So anyway, just put the time out, so I don't take all your time here. But so the estimate, rough estimate of what the clerks put together or what I could put together. I told the state that it was gonna cost us $368,000 for equipment and anticipated staffing for the first time we do it.
And that's total of all 18 townships.
Everybody did their best estimate, and
An
so,
idea.
yeah, it's a rough estimate. There's $30 million set aside to launch 9 days of early voting, but that's for the entire state. And again, we're not as big as some of the larger jurisdictions. And so they aren't suggesting at the state level that we'll get the full reimbursement to purchase these new machines and so on. And the second deadline to submit what you think you would need was in October. And I was unwilling to wait for October because I know first in, they're gonna have a look at what we think we need and perhaps we'll have a better chance of getting some of that back money to help support the local jurisdictions. They have to order this equipment. They have to go ahead and get in place to be ready for February.
So we voted for basically a tax increase.
I didn't.
Right.
Somebody did. My first
The
statement.
people, collectively, yeah.
Anywhere I go this is what we have to do, but no, that I did not vote for this. Anyway, somebody.
Just one more question.
Yes.
The 9 days of early voting, is there gonna be any records kept as far as, let's say the first day is a Monday, okay? That we had X number of people go through each of these precincts, and so on and so forth throughout the state, so they can look back at this later and go, okay, this was a waste of time and money, or, this was a really good idea because we got all these people to come out and do this.
I'm sure going forward, I'm sure that there will be a lot of review after this is in place for a bit. In our county, and I presume everywhere, there will be a listing of the voters in the different precincts. There'll be the counter of how many ballots were cast. And just like now, we know who gets an AD ballot, we know who goes on election day. So all of that is very carefully reviewed and calculated. I will point out, ask about county expenses, it's going to really increase our canvas costs because now we don't have one election, we have 10 elections, basically, and to review all of the outcomes and the balances. So we'll do it. We have to.
Sounds like you're on it.
Just
Hey,
have
any
clarifying,
questions, you can always comment.
a clarifying question. The 10th day of voting, is that going to be still held at these regional sites, or are you going to go back to people's normal voting location that they would normally have?
I would leave back normal voting sites. Nobody, anything I've read or anything I've been told doesn't say any of the 9 day, or the early voting sites will remain. Now, for instance, we'll take Goodland. They're going to be their own 9 day site. So people go back to Goodland municipalities. Election day, they'll be doing that Deerfield, and then Burlington will be running their own election. And I believe the whole background is to be open access for the voters, allow them to exercise their right to vote, so then it stands to reason that their local jurisdiction will be open those long hours on regular election day.
Just a quick question. The tabulators for 9 days, obviously, when we've had election day, and the tabulators were pretty much under the control of the clerks and all that. From the time the polls open to the time that they close and all the data was taken out and sent wherever it goes. Are these tabulators in any way, are there any changes to the connectivity of the tabulators to the internet?
The tabulators weren't and won't be connected to the internet at all. It's a freestanding ballot counting device. So for 9 days of early voting, at the sites, there has to be a guarantee that that tabulator can be locked and stored every night for security. But it is never connected to the
So
internet.
none of that data that's collected as far as who voted, how many voted, not talking about who voted for who or what, but that data is not sent to any government agency. It's just kept within the confines of the
Correct.
tabulator.
Correct. The tabulator, again, is not connected to the internet, but so you understand, the e-poll book, which is the computer that has voters listed, will have to have internet connectivity, because if you live in Lapeer Township and you want to go to do early voting, they need to know that you're a registered voter, that you haven't gotten a name ballot, you're not voting twice, lots of checks and balances. So we'll take Deerfield again for an example. They're going to have multiple precincts. So they're going to be able and need to check if a Burlington Township voter comes there to see they are really registered in Burlington Township, that they didn't get a Navy ballot, and also to mark them off that they have exercised their right to vote for that election. So that's the need for that voting history to have internet connectivity, which is another thing about the 9 days of early voting. We need to know they have security, we need to know they have internet connectivity, those kinds of things.
Commissioner Hall?
One question. We've had some challenges in recent years in the townships of finding enough election workers to man. You're dramatically increasing the number of people required, the number of hours required. Do you anticipate a challenge in finding enough people?
I believe that will be an issue. Many of the local clerks have already done like an early survey. They've invited their real good workers that always want to come back to let them know this is coming. We have a lot of snowbirds that are great workers, but they might be gone down to Florida or wherever it's warm temps for that presidential primary, which that's always been an issue because, you know, it's the retired folks that really care about civic duty that step up. In one of the townships, they told me one of their workers came and said, I want to work every day of the 9 days. So that was refreshing. But we'll be having training and recruiting. The Secretary of State, a couple of years ago, developed a site where anybody interested in being an election worker could actually sign up in Lansing, and then they let us know if there's somebody available that wants to go through the training and work. So we'll be fine, but it's going to be a lift maybe in some of the places. Yeah.
Great. Any more comments?
Thanks for letting me take so
Thank you.
much of your time.
Information. Thank you. Okay, any other department heads like to give us an update today?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to address some concerns that I've been hearing, including comments floating around social media regarding COVID-19. There's been much talk regarding possible shutdowns, mandates, etc., and I hope to be able to calm some of those concerns this morning. First of all, I don't anticipate any lockdowns, nor do I expect to hear of any general broad mandates, and here's why. When the COVID-19 virus first hit in late 2019, early 2020, it was a virus for which the majority of the population had never been exposed and thus had no immunity. Scientists, in other words, we had a vulnerable population. Scientists were still nailing down what we were dealing with, and there was no specific prescribed treatment, no vaccines, and still determining possible medications and antivirals that would be effective against it. Fast forward to 2023. Since that time, a large portion of the population has some form of immunity at this point, whether from contracting the illness or from vaccine. Now, due to the nature of viruses, which regularly mutate, just as the flu viruses do, this immunity does not necessarily keep everyone from contracting the currently circulating variant, but it does significantly reduce the number of severe cases and deaths, which is the aim that we have, is trying to keep people as healthy as possible. While you may see some mask requirements at some facilities, for example, cancer centers, long-term care facilities with vulnerable populations and some with outbreaks, and perhaps some other medical type facilities, I don't expect that there will be anything like we saw in 2020. Just as we see new variants of the influenza virus every year, we'll continue to see variants of the original virus causing COVID-19 for a very long time. I hope this will help to alleviate some of the widespread concerns regarding strict mandates. With many viruses regularly circulating, influenza, for example, colds, RSV, and yes, COVID-19, it's my hope that if people are sick, that they'll take care of themselves and take precautions on their own to avoid spreading those germs to others. So, and that's it.
Thank you. Any other department heads like to comment this morning?
Commissioners, Mr. Chairman,
Morning.
Keith Early, Director of Veterans Affairs. You probably weren't aware of it, not really big, But, last Saturday was my 4-year anniversary as a director for Veterans Affairs. So here I'm to present to you with, some boring numbers. So, Mr. Hagenon, Mr. Hamilton, good to see you again, as always. So, in the 4 years, we've had over 4,600 office appointments. We have fielded over 19,000 phone calls. We have had over 2,200 veteran walk-ins. We have made over 1,500 trips to various locations, to Detroit, Saginaw, Ann Arbor, Pontiac, Flint, and Yale, to take veterans to their appointments. Our drivers have accumulated over 143,000 miles driven and have accumulated over 6,600 volunteer hours. They're doing it just for the sake of helping them, that's all. So if you're aware, we have 2 emergent funds that run through our office. In the last 4 years, we have assisted over 80 veterans and a total of over $138,000 in emergent funds in 4 years. The last one I'd like to say, and again, I don't do a lot of attaboys or accolades, because it takes that one all proverbial doo-doo, and everything gets wiped away. And I don't take the credit for myself. I give it all to my staff. They're the ones that do the work. I'm here just to make sure that the lights stay on. But with that being said, our total number of new veterans that have come into this office since I've taken over is just over 825. That's a lot. 700 or 1,000 was my goal 4 years ago, and we're 3/4 of the way there. They're still out there. It's evidenced by the number of that's coming into the office. It's taken me to get out again. I'm getting back out into the community, talking to the townships, going to their township meetings, and spreading the word. And say, hey, vets, get them into the office. Your wife is one of them. So, and I'm not browbeating. I'm just, I'm very straightforward. They're out there. These veterans, they are entitled to this benefits because they donned the uniform of this country. They signed that dotted line. They're owed that much. Get them in there. For the simple fact, just to see if they are entitled. They may not be entitled. Just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you're entitled to it. Right? Just a couple things that we're working on. Working on a new millage language for next year. As you're aware, our millage ends in December. So I'm working in conjunction with Mr. Howell and getting our millage language for the primary next August. And we'll be doing I don't know if everybody's aware of EDDM, every door direct mailing. We'll be sending out almost 40,000 mailings here probably within the next month and a half. And that's just to all the residents in Lapeer County. And it's basically just a brief overview of our trifold that we give to different locations. Don't throw it away. I know it's election time. There's a lot of stuff going on, election stuff out there. It says Veterans Affairs right on it. Please don't throw it away. If you know a veteran, hand it to them. Everybody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows a veteran. Give it to them. My goal was 1,000. No, my goal was 1,500. So please get it in there because it's important. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but we've secured probably close to $400,000 in back pay to our veterans in the next 4 years. And that's probably on our website. So, again, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to assist not only the veterans, but the community itself. I love my job. I love coming to work every day. It's my therapy. So,
First off, thank you for what you do, but I also want to remind this board that when this millage does come up, I know I've got one in my area, Truman, you've got one in your area, not sure about any of the townships, but we need to make sure that the DDA does not capture the veterans millage money. As far as I'm concerned, every cent of that millage needs to go to our veterans.
And I don't think since I've been here, because there's been an increase and there's been a renewal, I don't think the DDA has ever, there's been talk about it, but I don't think the DDA has ever captured anything.
I want to make sure it stays that way.
Oh, believe me, if they want to, you know me, I love confrontation. I'll get into it with people.
So your millage is gonna be on the ballot in 24,
That is the intent, yes,
and then the millage expires end of this year.
December
So
20th.
obviously, you have to carry over.
Well, we can still capture the fall taxes, the winter taxes.
Okay.
So we're doing things with, finance to try to keep it going. So,
Correct.
any other
Thank you.
questions? Well, here's
Any
to another
questions?
4 years, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, any other department heads like to give us an update this morning? Okay, that brings us to our first public time. Anybody from the public like to comment during the first public time?
Good morning. Thank you all for what you do. My name is Rose Navarre and I'm from Attica Township. I would like to support the prosecutor over 3 years to try a case. That's unacceptable. So I would beg you to support that because that's like ridiculous. So I'm all for that. I'm stunned by the 9-day early voting. I did not vote for it either. I really do wonder if people really realized what they were voting for, or I still have an issue with the voting, that I don't know if it's all legal or legit. You know, I volunteered, I was an election worker in Davison because they didn't need us in Lapeer. All of my tabulators, I was with 2 precincts. The 2, well, I don't know how many there were. There were at least 1 on each side, and then there was the assisted one in the middle. All of them were not zeroed out. This is my first election, and I was horrified because number one thing is, you know, when you open the thing at 6 o'clock, none of them were zeroed out. The one on my side had over 200 votes. I just think chaos. I mean, that was my first election, and I saw things that I didn't understand because I was new. But I just think 9 days of chaos and the amount of workers, absolutely. I can't believe that the people in Michigan would have voted for this. It's insane. For 200 years, we all voted in 1 day, and there's an opportunity for absentee voting. I'm stunned. And the cost, I think, $400,000. What? I mean, the veterans, give that money. There's so many uses for that money. I'm sick back there listening to this early voting thing. I'm stunned. And like I said, I don't know how they're going to get people for all those 9 days. It just sounds more chaos. Then we're going to move those to the other ones. It just sounds like chaos. And when there's chaos and uncertainty, there's room for error. It's very troublesome to me. So I know that you really can't do anything about it, but it really is very upsetting right there for me. So thank you.
Thank you. And also public like to comment during the first public time?
My name's Anna Pierce, I'm from Hadley Township. I appreciated T. Spencer's discussion on what's going to happen, because even if we don't like it, it's good to know. So we know what's going on. But when she was talking about this 9-day thing, I and some of my friends have been discussing how that the federal constitution actually says that our election should be on 1 day. The Tuesday next after the first Monday in November and every even numbered year is established as the day for the election in each of the states and territories in the United States of reps and delegates to the Congress commencing on the 3rd day of January next thereafter. I'm not a lawyer, but I do think that applies here. I know that Michigan's Constitution also talks about the election being on 1 day as well. Of course, we changed that. I don't know if we're going to go back and fix those words where it does say 1 day. But that's my only comment.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to comment this morning?
I'm Dave Clayford from Oregon Township. I just want to say something particularly for this group right here. I am thoroughly impressed. I was all prepared. I had my phone with the resolution or information about the sanitary code regulation they're trying to get through. Unfortunately, what's happening here is the same thing that happened years ago with the farmers. They said you can no longer have your cattle go into that creek and drink or cross from one field to another. Now they're coming after each individual in so many subdivisions. But more than that, a lot of these lakes that are set up initially for summer activities now have become big developments, big homes on them, all this. I think you all know that. And I think this is so important that you as a board have presented a letter here that you're going to be submitting. I think that is just, I want to commend you for that. I see so many people, they don't think about the cost that Joe Blow over here, they're a retired couple, and they're in their 80s. They've been on this farm for years and retired, and they rent the property out to have a little extra income. And now they're going to have to come up with paying $500 every 5 years just to have it inspected. Then if they find something, a lot of these are old ones. I mean, we had one run on our farm. We had a 55-gallon drum out for a septic tank years ago. Eventually, we did upgrade and got it legal. But yeah, there are some out there, still the 55-gallon drum type things. But the lakes and the ponds, all this stuff, I'm really concerned about that. If we don't stand up like we are here in Lapeer County and let the people know that, hey, they can't afford it. They cannot afford it. We the people cannot afford it. Who's going to pay for this? Well, they say, oh, well, we can, I haven't read the whole thing. I read enough to get me aggravated about it. But I just commend the group here for standing up and presenting. I like the letter you got here. And the voting thing, I didn't vote for the 9-day early voting myself. I think it's a waste of money, a waste of just putting challenges so much onto the general public. How are we going to man all this? The election workers and all this, like Teresa was saying, it's a farce. We're expected to do all this. Well, they sit up there in Lansing in their little dome and say, oh yeah, we can do this. We'll make the people do this and that. Well, we'll throw money at it though, make it look good, make it look lucrative. But in game, we don't have the manpower. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to comment during the first public time?
Terry Coleman from Deerfield Township. As far as the early voting, I just want to kind of bring to your attention that the burden is going to cause the townships as far as financially and finding people. We kind of see the state coming in and wanting to take control of townships. I just don't want the state to see that we can't financially handle it and we don't have the people to handle it. And so I don't want them to come in and take control of our elections. So that's just something that I just kind of wanted to bring to light and have you guys maybe think about, that maybe the state has I don't know, a thought of maybe having an opportunity here to take over our elections because our townships can't afford it now because of the 9 days and we don't have the people to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to comment during the first public time?
Carolyn, Marathon Township. First of all, I was at the Marathon Township meeting last night, and they did discuss the what it was going to cost for the election, and talked about the printers that they're going to have to buy and the tabulators and whatever. And it sounds like just for our township, and this hasn't been completely decided yet, because our township will now be traveling up to Deerfield Township to vote for those 9 days, unless something happens that we don't do all of that. But $10,000 was not an amount that was out of the question for my township. That was not a question. And we have 18 townships. So, thank you for these resolutions. I hope you'll pass both of them. They're so important. Marathon Township last night did pass a resolution that I submitted to them regarding local control. I received a resolution that has been being submitted to different townships, and so I read it, and rewrote a little bit, and submitted it, and our township did adopt it. So I was very thankful for that. They do support local control. There are hearings today in Lansing about abortion, making abortion even more extreme, if you can call it extreme. We need to pray about it. We are no longer pure Michigan, we are putrid Michigan. When our governor is inviting people from other states to come to our state to take the lives of children, I can hardly handle it. And I think that we live in a beautiful state, but we don't have beautiful morals in this state. It's been going down for a long time. So please at least pray for it. But the hearings are going on, and it's all the way up to, it's partial birth abortion, all the way up to the time of birth. Someone said this week that we talk about the threat of foreign and domestic, that we have threats of foreign and domestic. And sometimes I think, well, this person said we also have the threat of Democrat and Republicans, I mean, because we're not standing up for what we need to be standing up for. All of us. We're crossing over, and I just thank you for these resolutions that you're at least supporting. And people will say, well, resolutions don't matter, but you know what, they do matter, especially when you have all the counties that are taking on these resolutions. Pressure matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public with a comment during the first public time?
Hello, I'm Mike Eckert from Goodwin Township. And on this early voting thing, I've talked to our township clerk, and she's freaking out. With the cost, there's been no grants associated with the cost of this 9-day early voting. Now, from my understanding, talking to her, they're also saying that they cannot use the local tabulators that they use for local voting, but they have to have all new tabulator, which is, she's saying an estimate of $14,000 for the township. And that's for each township for the early voting. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Oh. Okay. Anyway, to me, it's an undue burden for the small township that we're in. And like I say, a lot of people don't know what's going on. There's no information really from the state. And we don't have the personnel in order to man this. I'm talking from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock at night for a minimum of 3 people, possibly more. So I understand why she's freaking out. But the next subject is, I want to thank the commissioners for the resolution 2023 R11. We've been fighting with our township and local people on solar, and we're afraid, I'm afraid, and the group that I represent are afraid that the state is going to take that over. We have no choice. We have no ability to determine where the solar is going to go or how much is going to be in our small township. So I hope it's enforceable. It's one thing to do a resolution, it's another thing to enforce it against the state. Hopefully it is enforceable. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to comment during the first public time? Okay, we'll close the first public time. Brings us to item number 1 under new business. We have Steve Curry here from MAC's Executive Director to give us the annual update. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. My name is Steve Curry. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Counties. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. One of my roles as Executive Director is to try to get out to as many counties as possible and do outreach like this each year. I try to make about half the board meetings, so anytime I can get 45 minutes to go through my presentation, I'll just go. It's about 15 minutes.
You get 3 minutes.
No, anytime I get time in your meeting, I know it's very valuable. So I will be brief, but I do want to leave some time for questions at the end. Because a lot of the issues that we're discussing we're dealing with in Lansing. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about the association. I know many of you are new to the county commission. I want to talk to you about the history of the association. We were established February 1st in 1898. We actually have the original minutes from the first meeting in our office, the handwritten meeting minutes. So it's pretty cool if you're ever in Lansing and come to our office, you can kind of see those and see who's present. We're the oldest association representing local governments in Michigan, and actually, I think we're the oldest county or oldest organization in the country representing county government, so that's kind of a feather in our cap. A few service expansions. In 1955, we had the first executive director. In 1979, we established our workers' compensation fund. In 1986, we established our service corporation. Slide 3 talks a little bit about the purpose of MAC. We're primarily known for advocacy, so your voice in Lansing. We work cooperatively with NACO in Washington to kind of bring the concerns that we have from our county commissioners to the state and the federal level. We obviously look at that as a team effort, so hopefully we'll provide you with the tools to talk to your locally representatives when those issues come up. We provide educational opportunities through conferences, webinars, one-day educational sessions, and we also provide services through our association you can take advantage of. Slide 4 is the leadership of MAC right now. Stan Ponstein's the MAC president. He is from Kent County. Jim Story is first vice president from Allegan County. Melissa Dobbs, second vice president from Wayne County. Our board is made up of 16 elected commissioners, 2 from each of our region, and then there are a few at-large seats. Our board meets at least 4 times a year at each of our conferences and 2 separate times throughout the year. And we typically have elections for our board in our fall conference. So that'll be this October. We do have some elections coming up. Moving to slide 6, talks about our internal committees as are appointed by our president. There are 6 internal committees. A few folks sit on our committees, so we do appreciate your representation on there. You have 3 commissioners that sit on those committees, so you're well represented in our committees. Those committees form our platforms, which is kind of our legislative marching orders for our staff when we interact with the legislature. Those are then voted on by the board and then by the general membership at our annual conference. That'll be this fall. We'll vote on those platforms. Those are redone every year. So that the board will vote and the general membership will vote. We work on those throughout the year, kind of fine-tune those each year. So moving into the legislative priorities, before I talk about those priorities and what's going on in Lansing, let's talk a little bit about what we hear about adjournment and things like that with the new early primary. So the intent of the legislature is to have an early primary in order to meet that goal of the February 27th or March primary. They would have to go sine die, which means adjourn. That means end legislative session by beginning of November. So we're looking at between now and potentially beginning of November for a legislative session. Once the session ends, everything resets. So all bills go away, everything has to be reintroduced, things like that. So very truncated time frame if you start looking at what, especially what the governor talked about a few weeks ago with their energy plan. You know, some big changes there. You've got some big legislative issues still hanging out there. So, you know, and I haven't been through this. I've been with the association 12 years. I have never seen an early adjournment like this. So this is all new to Lansing, and some of it's speculation too that it hasn't been formally agreed to yet. So just wanted to make you aware of that's kind of what happens and what the scope of things in Lansing look like. So talking about those priorities, I'll talk about each of these more specifically, but revising the Open Meetings Act, creating a fair revenue sharing system for counties, enacting reforms to ensure proper local funding for courts, increasing resources for juvenile justice services, compensating local governments for funds diverted by the veterans' property tax exemption, and then revamping PPT exemptions to provide annual reimbursement. So 3 of those issues actually had hearings this week, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. So first off, revising the Open Meetings Act. Essentially what we're looking to do is amend the Open Meetings Act to allow for remote voting at the county level. Prior to COVID, County commissioners could participate and vote remotely based on local rules for county board meetings. We'd like to get that back to that ability. Obviously, there's some concerns with not showing up for a certain amount of time. That could all be regulated at the local level, so the local board gets in there and say you can do it 5 times a year, you can only do it 1 time a year. Those could all be regulated. So we do want to get back to that. I don't know if we will see movement on that this year, but it is something we're working towards. Creating a fair revenue sharing system for counties. So as you folks know, or not know, counties are primarily funded by county or state revenue sharing dollars, property taxes, state revenue sharing. Well, the counties get statutory revenue sharing, CDTs get constitutional and statutory. Constitutional is pretty much guaranteed, statutory is not. It means that each year the legislature can appropriate those county revenue sharing dollars away to different priorities should they see fit. Obviously, that's part of our job is to ensure those county revenue sharing dollars are there each and every year. We've been very successful in the past 5 years or so, getting increases to the previous year's county revenue sharing dollars. This year we got a 5% increase, and it's ongoing, so it will compound over time. However, there have been times, and I've been there for that, where there have been 20% cuts to county revenue sharing. So you can think about how devastating to your budget that could be when you see those sort of cuts. So what we are doing here, and this actually did pass unanimously out of House Local Government Committee yesterday, is essentially creating a revenue sharing trust fund, a virtual lockbox for county revenue sharing dollars, or it's actually local government revenue sharing. So it would make it more difficult for the legislature to appropriate those dollars away each year. It'd be funded by a percentage of the state sales tax each year. It would share in the growth of the sales tax, which has had growth over the past, 10 years. So as that fund would grow, as the state revenue or sales tax grows, that revenue sharing would grow equitably. So we would see the same growth. It would basically normalize county revenue sharing, whereas before it kind of was this formula. No one really knew what it did or how it got there, but it just these dollars went to counties. This would be something that would share. If the economy is doing well, counties would share in that and be able to use those dollars as they see fit at the local level. So as I said, that did pass out of House Committee. It is on the House floor. We are not hearing a whole lot of opposition, with the exception of State Treasury. Obviously, it ties their hands a little more when they're looking at their budgeting process, but we are hopeful to get that through the rest of the process by the end of this legislative session. Enacting funding for reforms for local courts. As you may or may not know, courts currently are funded by fees for those who use the court system. There had been a court case back a few years ago that would prohibit courts from charging those fees. Had that happened, it would cost counties about $50 million statewide to fund the court system. Obviously, a huge dollar figure for counties. We were able to get legislation passed that allowed those fees to continue up until a certain point. Prior to COVID hitting, the Trial Court Funding Commission was created to look at how courts are funded, made recommendations on an equitable way for courts to be funded. They started working on some of those recommendations. They being the legislature, COVID hits, everything falls apart, we start back from zero. In the meantime, that legislation was due to sunset, allowing for those court fees. We did get an extension on that legislation for those court fees to be charged. That is due to sunset in 2024 next year, May of 2024. So again, we're starting those conversations on how to properly fund the courts. Are we going to take those recommendations from the Trial Court Funding Commission and enact those? If we are going to, we need to move quickly. Otherwise, we're looking at coming up with another sunset date that will have to get bumped out again, because we obviously don't want those fees to fall on the counties to pay for the court system. So stay tuned on that. Just an update on that. I don't see any movement on that this legislative session, so there's something we'll have to pick up in the spring. Increasing resources for juvenile justice. This is a bit of a general statement. It's a statewide issue. Obviously, there's not enough beds statewide for these kids that are in the system. There's not enough folks that want to work in the system. So we're increasingly working with the legislature to make sure those funds are available at the state level. We were successful in the budget at the beginning of the year to get an increase in the reimbursement rate from the state to locals for this issue. So it went from 50% reimbursement rate to a 75% reimbursement rate, which is huge dollars for locals. So we're happy with that, but it's still a continuing discussion that we are having on kids. Moving to slide 12. So back in 2013, there was legislation that enabled disabled veterans to get a property tax exemption on their properties. Something that cost counties, at the time, not that much. Now it's ballooned up to about $100 million. We don't have a problem with the property tax exemption idea, but we do think the state should have to pay for it. Obviously, We're seeing more and more of these exemptions come through for various things. And our position has always been if the state wants to vote on it, they should reimburse locals for it. That's an easy vote at the legislature when you're taking away local dollars. It becomes a little more thoughtful when you start thinking about how it impacts the state budget. So this is legislation, reintroduction of legislation that we did have momentum on last session to get that reimbursement done. So this would not have any impact to the veteran on what they are getting for their exemption. All it would mean is that the state would reimburse locals for that exemption going forward. So we are hopeful to see movement on that. I don't remember if that passed that committee yesterday or not. There were so many things going on, but I know it did get a positive hearing on it. So we'll keep you updated on that. I'm sure it'll be in our update this week. Revamping PPT exemption for annual reimbursement. Back in 2021, there was a economic development package that was passed through the legislature. Part of that package ended up being an increase in the small business property tax exemption from about $80,000 to $160,000. That increase in exemption cost locals about $75 million statewide. Again, another hit to local dollars. We were promised at the time a fix to make sure that locals were reimbursed for that. It was a truncated, linked up that year, so it didn't get done. This is the fix for that. We had a hearing on this yesterday in House side, and we'll have an update on it this week, but it was a favorable hearing, and I think we will definitely see movement on this by the end of the year. So three of our priorities had hearings this week, so we're really happy to see movement on that in the legislature. Slide 14 talks a little about the budget that was done earlier in the year. I talked about these issues already. A couple I didn't talk about. The injured defense, there's $72 million for statewide grants to cover costs in standard 8. And I know there's varying opinions on standard 8 across the state, and we are working with the legislature to try to find ways to get the pay more equitable between the prosecutor's office and the injured defense office, because in a lot of areas that pay is getting very different. When you have the state funding one side of it, the county's funding one side, it's tough to keep up. So we got to find ways to make that a more fair system. Public health, we were successful in getting a $25 million increase in central local public health issues, and then I talked about the revenue sharing and child care fund. And then some bills of interest that are obviously no surprise to you folks, because you've got two resolutions based on two of them right now. Obviously, the statewide solar issue, one of the governor's priorities and part of her energy package is that moving it to the PSC. I know you guys are familiar with it. We are, of course, opposed to it. Will we see movement on that by the end of the year? Anytime a governor comes out with a priority like that, you have to be concerned about it. You have to stay close to it. We are working with the legislature, and they have been wanting to discuss ways to preserve local control, but they don't want local control to impede the process, so it's a balancing act. So we're working to see how we can make sure local control is preserved in that instance. Statewide septic code, again, this is something, and I know Commissioner Howe's seen this because it's been introduced for the past 10 years, statewide septic code. Something we've opposed for a long time. We are swimming upstream on that because we're the only state that doesn't have a statewide septic code, so that's the first thing we always hear. But there are varying degrees of issues in various parts of the state, and that needs to be respected as well. Do we expect to see movement on that? I don't know. With everything else going on, I think that's probably a heavy lift this legislative session, but can't quote me on that. But we are working close to that right now. Juvenile justice reform, I talked about that, and then there's a bill that would open up binding arbitration for corrections officers, so it would expand binding arbitration for those correction officers that work in the jail, something we've opposed a long time, just because anytime anyone goes to binding arbitration, it tends to get more expensive for your councils. Moving on to slide 16, that is our advocacy team. So Dina Bosworth is our Director of Government Affairs. She primarily handles tax and general government issues. Madeline Feta, Government Affairs Associate, she handles transportation and environmental issues. Samantha Gibson, Government Affairs Associate, she handles health and human services and judiciary issues. And then Amanda is our Government Affairs Assistant. She kind of keeps the grill for the train on the tracks as we're moving everything in the office. We do have a MAC pack. We use that pack to support the 24 former county commissioners that are in the legislature right now, so we appreciate any donations to that. I talked about our conference briefly. It's coming up in Kalamazoo, October 1st through 3rd. Hopefully you are registered. Early bird registration ended a week or so ago, and I know many of you attended our new county commissioner school, so we appreciate that. Hopefully you found that valuable as well. Our legislative conference will be this spring in the end of April. That conference is always in Lansing, so we have to plan on that to the Lansing annual conference, and that's the bounce around the state. So stay tuned on that. And then finally, those are our MAC communication tools: Facebook, Twitter, we have a podcast, Instagram. Hopefully you're getting our weekly updates. We've gone back to a printed newsletter every other month. So hopefully bombarding you with way too much information, but listen to some of it when it comes. So that's my update. Be happy to answer any questions you folks may have.
Commissioner Howell?
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. First, my comment is that we really appreciate that. They have been steadfast allies in Lansing, battling the bills on aggregate mining, which is particularly important in your county. They, along with the municipal league and the township association, are the reason why it hasn't been jammed down our throats yet. And now, of course, that's expanding with the solar and the wind efforts to take away local control. Bill has got some resolutions that I think are right on point. But you're great allies, and we appreciate that, and I've worked with you long enough to know you're effective. Now, question. You mentioned the National Association of Counties. When I became the commissioner, I was amazed that we are not a member of the National Association of Counties. You know, we are in this perpetual struggle. We talk about every single commission meeting of local government versus federal government versus state government. And working through the MAC is very effective. What's your relationship with the National Association? What are your thoughts on participation in that?
So, you know, we have, I think, 50 to 60 counties, I believe, that are members of NACO. They're obviously separate from us. We do have 2 board members on the board, so our MAC, immediate past president and president sit on their board. There are other various organizations that have appointments to that NACO board, and then many of our commissioners sit on their committees. I would say that when you look at, let's say, ARPA funding and how that all transpired, NACO was very, very involved in that, and protected counties very well in that regard. You know, with the relationship in Washington through NACO is they do a very good job, and you know, I don't know what their dues structure looks like. I have no idea what your dues cost for them, but I would say it's, you know, if you look at what you got in ARPA dollars and what your dues are for NACO, I would say that there's your return on investment, in my opinion. But that's a local decision for you guys, for you folks to do. Some states do it differently, but in Michigan, we allow the local counties to do it. But I do think they're a very, very good organization.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the creating a fair revenue sharing system. I think that's great, because if you look at sales tax has gone up on products, cars, ATVs, things like that, from 35 to 60%. And so the state's collecting an increase in sales tax of 35 to 65%, which is a huge number. Well, yeah, we're kind of capped at a 5% property tax increase this year. So we're definitely behind. And that's, you know, my question is, maybe you probably don't have the answer, but what's the state doing with all that increase in sales tax money when?
Well, I mean, I think you can read the headlines on a lot of what's going on. Right. So a lot of the economic development packages that have gone through, I think they found ways to spend those dollars, and it hasn't necessarily, obviously we got a 5% increase in county revenue stream, we're proud of that, but it hasn't necessarily all trickled down to the local level when you're saying the exact same thing you're saying. Your salaries have gone up, your cost of your goods have gone up as well. And Michigan is a tourist place, so a lot of these places that are high tourist attraction areas, their public safety can't keep up with the calls, they can't hire enough people, you know. You're competing with the private market out there in a lot of industries for some of your jobs, and you can't keep up because your pay can't keep up with the private industry. So this is a way to kind of protect that and share in the growth should there be some.
Yeah, I think we all appreciate that effort, because that's a big deal. So, any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Okay, it brings us to item number 2, prosecuting attorney in front of the court. We have a request to accept the 5-year cooperative reimbursement program grant agreement between MDHHS and prosecuting attorney's office through September 30th, 2028.
Well, good morning again, and thank you. The reason we requested to be on this agenda item together with Mr. Joseph and myself, the director of our front of the court, is because our offices work together in pursuing child support orders for families that are on state systems. So So if there's a father and a mother that have a child together and they're unwed, the state, and they're collecting some kind of state assistance, the Department of Health and Human Services reaches out to our office to commence a case with the friend of the court to go forward to pursue a child support order for that child. So that at least one parent is paying something towards the care and raising of the child, and often birth expenses are a component of that. So that's why we're appearing together. This is a renewal of the existing contract that's been in place for many, many years. Joseph, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, from our perspective, this is essential for the operations of our department. It's essentially a 2/3 contribution from the state funds and then local funds. It's what runs our operations. There are conditions on there that do vary, but they are relatively consistent. There are things that we've required to uphold in the past, such as confidentiality. We're dealing with people's personal information. It makes sense that we choose to be lax with what we do with that. And I would respect the request that you approve both mine and Mr. Norwood's request.
Any questions? You can answer that.
This would include A and B.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's a motion.
I'll move to accept the 5-year cooperative reimbursement program grant for fiscal year 24 to 28 between MDHHS and the Lapeer County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, as attached and further to authorize the county controller to electronically accept the grant, and that a copy be forwarded to the county clerk to be entered into the official record as an exhibit.
Support. Any discussion? Just to clarify, is this a motion for A and B? Or just the one?
You just mentioned it.
Okay.
If you don't mind, Bill, since you're the second, I'll also include B, the request to accept the 5-year cooperative reimbursement program grant between MDHS and the friend of the court for fiscal year 24 through 28. Sorry about that, gentlemen.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Okay, brings us to emergency management. We have a request to approve the renewal of an Everbridge alerting services through March 20th, 2024. To be paid by the HSGP fund at no cost to the county.
I'll move it.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Brings us to B, request to accept the bid for the seam lighting and batteries and authorize the purchase of the reimbursement by the HSGP.
I'll move approval of that.
All for it?
Kevin got it. Did we get a bid for that?
Yes, we did, $40,026.90.
So it's less than what?
It's last.
Okay, good.
This is the sea lighting grant we discussed several times in the past.
Does that mean
Just for information, I did do some research on the cost of those items. That quote that you got was $440 cheaper per unit than Home Depot.
Oh, okay.
Just, FYI.
All right.
good? So motion and support? We have support on that?
I support.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Brings us to item number 4, Sheriff's Department's request to approve the annual OCB payment of $49.95 to renew the sheriff's cap.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mike.
I wanted to come because I don't think this is something that we've discussed before as a program that we have. So I thought it'd be good to kind of fill you in so that you're aware. And then I also want to get with Crystal and rerun this. But so when I first came in my first year, this was a new thing. It was called the Sheriff's App. I went to the Michigan State for quite some time for the new sheriff's school. This was a brand new thing in Michigan at the time. They were in other states all over. Basically what it was is that at the time, when they were coming into Michigan and presented at ours, the first 3 counties that signed up for this locked into a rate of $4,995 for the time that we had that. The first 3 that got in under that rate, there wouldn't be an increase in it. So I looked at it, I sat down with the rep, went through everything, so I think we enacted that like in our first, my first year coming here. And we stayed the same, so this is something you're gonna see every year at this time. It's a fantastic tool, it's exploded across Michigan right now, most counties are paying 3 to 4 times what we're paying because we got into that introductory rate. Lapeer County was actually in the advertisement for Michigan because we were the very first ones in the state to have it. So when they go to all their conferences and stuff, it's the Lapeer County's app they're showing. If you don't know, if you go to any of your phones that you have, if you go to your app store and you type in Lapeer County Sheriff, it'll pop up with the app and you can download that. It's free of charge. There's nothing with it for the actual user. Fantastic tool for us. We're able to put out alerts, notifications, all kinds of multiple different things with it. Sex offenders in your area. The one big thing is you can, if you go on right now, you can see every single person we have in our jail. You can see what they're in there for, what their arraignment dates are. So people look at it, you get people that complain about that piece of it too, but it's helpful for the victims to know, hey, here's what's next with them, or if they do. It also helps in workload because now people don't just call the county and say, hey, Scott McKenna in jail there. They're able to look on the app and see if a family member or whoever it may be is on. Another big piece to that is the inmates that are in there. Family members can go right through the app and put money on their commissary, on their cards, whatever it may be. So it's very helpful to the family. They can post bond on there. They can put bond on there that ultimately goes to their attorney. But a huge amount of services for our inmates and then obviously for our public. So it's a great tool. It's free of charge to everybody. Obviously, the $49.95 is the what we pay for that yearly rate. We just did a complete revamp on it. The only thing that hasn't been updated on there yet is actually my bio stuff. I think it still shows my kids at like 12 years old. So that's the next piece, but we've completely redone it. So the other nice part about this is we've talked, I think, probably in the past about funding that comes through our commissary, whether it's foods or things that they have inside the jail that their families are able to pay for, put money on there. This entire $49.95 gets paid out of commissary because it's a benefit to the inmates and their families is one of the key things for that. So there's really no cost in our budget or to the county. It's basically coming from commissary that the inmates pay because of the ability for the families to have contact and things like that for them. Any questions on it?
No, I have it.
Awesome.
That's an app you can get on the App Store?
Yeah, it's all free. You just go, it doesn't matter what platform you have, you just go to your app store, Lapeer County Sheriff, and it'll pop up. It's a black background with Lapeer County Sheriff on it, and then it downloads and you can go, there's all kinds of stuff on it.
That's a very affordable price. It's about $400 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you see what the other departments are paying. Yeah, we got a good deal on that one.
I'll move it and then after we vote.
Sure.
Can I ask you a question?
100%.
I'll support.
Motion is support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
So I asked to be excused, because I used the men's room, and then, as I was walking down there, ran into the lieutenant's wife and
Yep.
strong-armed her into selling me the wristband. If you would like to tell why you're here, the commission and the audience.
So the sheriff's department's been hammered recently with some help with you. We have two, obviously, Deputy E-Boy, the one that the DFW is doing a fundraiser for. I give another kudos to Crave, the restaurant. We're setting up accounts right now for their family. Rob, obviously was an Emily City officer for many years. Was in a horrible accident on duty. Went out on a medical. So he now works inside of it. His passion was that. So I hired him probably 4 years ago, somewhere in there. He works in the front office, does a phenomenal job for us. Rob is a great worker. Obviously married, kids, grandkids. Rob started having some issues in his neck and went to the doctor. He got sent to U of M within 12 hours and was admitted to U of M and has been there now. He's going to be there for, I think, 7 weeks, and he's getting chemo every single day. So it's been a horrible, but the way Rob is, he's very upbeat, very positive. We talk to him every day. He stays right there. Rob's with his laptop doing stuff for work here. I think probably occupied his mind too, that he's going through it. But that's what the fundraiser, there's multiple things. Obviously, the wristbands will be sergeant, that's in another horrible situation, Keith Mercer, who also sits on Deerfield Township's board, been with us, he's in the jail, phenomenal boy, phenomenal man. They found out they've been fighting, his wife has cancer, and she has drastically declined. They found multiple other spots. She's been going through chemo now for a few months, having all kinds of trouble. And in the middle of it, as they're doing this, they find out Keith has kind of cancer also. Problem is, Keith isn't getting his treatments because he's caring for his wife. And the doctors are telling him he needs to do it immediately, but obviously he's taking care of his wife also. So there's going to be multiple fundraisers that are coming up. Unfortunately, we've had it stinks. The whole thing stinks. And but on the other side of it, I say is, in our county, we all know this, what a county to be in, because people rally around people like this and the things they do. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you and obviously the public and the community for work. Because when something like this comes out, people rally. Our businesses, same things. I got called as soon as that post hit last night. I started getting called from every area of here. Okay, we can do a fundraiser here, or I can do my restaurant, I can do my bowling alley, do whatever. So we're going to have a lot of projects that are coming up to try to help these people out. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings us to number 5, buildings and grounds and parks. Request to amend the swipe card identification badge policy to increase replacement fee of a lost or stolen badge from $5 to $10 due to increase in supply expenses. I'll move it. Support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Number 7, community corrections, request to approve change notice number 1 to the fiscal year 2022 grant amount with MDOC to reflect a $30,000 decrease. Oh, wow, I did not, I apologize, I'm right there. Okay, health department number 6, request to accept a 4-year strengthening public health workforce initiative grant with the MDHHS. Sorry, let's get over.
That's right, you're fine. But the first thing I want to do is correct the motion because I was going back and forth with downtown to make sure we had the language correct. But there was a misunderstanding when it came to that amount because what you are accepting is the 4 years, not just the 1 year. And because we're given the ability to draw down as much or as little each year as we wanted. We chose the equal amounts roughly because we want to use it to help us with the staffing issues that we're having. Wage study was great, we needed it, but with the number of professionals that we have in our building, that was a big hit. And so we have not been able to fund all of the positions that we're going into. And one of them is in our environmental health sanitarian. So the reason why we wanted to have it even was to ensure that we would have those dollars each year to be able to cover the staffing issues that we're dealing with. This is a 4-year. We've been told that they expect it to be renewed after the 4 years, but I don't have a guarantee. So I'll be upfront and honest with that.
So the wage studies
I'm sorry?
the wage studies created a gap in your budget, basically.
Say again?
The wage studies created a gap in your budget.
A big gap. A big gap. This would enable us to fill the, actually, we would be coming and requesting a regular part-time sanitary position from personnel if you approve this, because that's the cost that we can handle in the grant. But it would help fill that position that we badly need in order to help out with a huge hole we have right now. So.
Do you have a number on what the gap was because of the wage study? Just
I can't give it to you exactly, and the reason is because we're still waiting on that monies that the health departments are supposed to be getting. We knew that it was going to be using the same formula that they used back in 2020, I believe, but that they were also tweaking numbers based on changes in county population and permits and things like that. So we did our best guesstimate, and using that estimate is what we used in order to balance the budget so we could maintain our staffing the way it is. We're still waiting for that exact dollar amount to come back so that we know exactly what it is. But I do know that, a regular part-time sanitarian to start would be about $42,000. It'd be about 80-some thousand for a full-time, because that then includes benefits plus those extra hours. So, we looked at the work, we think that a regular part-time, which would be 28 hours, would suffice to be able to fill that goal that we need. And so that's one thing that we're looking at with staffing is that and
So just for clarity, there'll be it's a 4-year agreement. This is a 4-year agreement.
it's a 4-year agreement, and the total is on the one page, which is 704, 738. Divided equally, it's roughly, we're like $1 over the divided equally on this one.
Okay.
So we don't anticipate having all of the costs that we put into this one on the next one, such as we're hoping to take care of the workstation, such this year, so that those dollars would not need to be pulled down next year.
So you're getting 176,000 each year, not to cover 4 years. Okay.
Correct. The total would be 704, 738 that you're accepting. That's the 4 years total amount. What I gave you was we were required to submit 3 days ago. Obviously, we would have to pull it back because this wasn't official, but we would have to submit the work plan and budget request 3 days ago, and so this is what we've submitted. So I'm just letting you know that this is what we're requesting from the state for the first year. The cost allocation, that's money that comes off right off the top that goes to the county. So that's not money that we can use directly at the office.
So things like the workstation furniture upgrades and stuff like that, that's obviously a one-time purchase. So in the following years, where does that money that's gonna be available?
That would be then available. We have, remember, every year there's raises, and we'd have to reevaluate then the staffing issues at that point in time. Because I also want to make sure that we can maintain it on a long-term basis if possible.
Jackie, to clarify our conversation, was it 2% or 4% a year?
We did 4% for
Okay, so there's a 4% cost of living increase. That'll work against that number.
I'll do that.
Support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Would that be with the modified motion indicating the total amount of the 4-year grant? The motion that's written on the sheet that you have only gave that one year total. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear with the clerk's office that you're passing the motion to include the entire 4-year amount.
Yep, for 704, 740.
Yep. And I can give that to you too, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was voting on the right amount and thing, that's all.
Is that 4-year guaranteed that you're gonna get it? I mean, is it,
4-year
when it's gonna be available?
Guaranteed for the 4 years, yes.
And then after that?
After
It
that,
could dry up, right?
they expect that they're going to renew it, but they can't guarantee. Exactly. I don't have a guarantee.
Okay, so all those in favor say we.
Sorry.
Motion carried.
Sorry for the confusion.
It's all right.
I wanted to make sure there was less confusion later on. If you made it just right.
Okay, brings us to B, request to accept the fiscal year 2024 Health Department Eagle Grant Agreement. Can you explain, is this a renewal or is this a new grant?
Nope, this is every year that they give this to us. The bulk of the dollars goes to the type 2 water supply program. It's all state dollars. Let me give you a breakdown of the, I know that on the very last page it tells you how much goes to each one. But the bulk of it, 183,822, goes to the non-community water supply. That's also called type 2 water. Those are wells that supply, especially businesses, churches, anyone who has 25 or more people that are on a well. And that's because they require testing quarterly on those wells. Long-term water monitoring, that would just be for special project. If the state asked us to do some additional water testing, for example, on sites like the Metamora landfill area. Campgrounds, those are campgrounds that have trailer campers, etc. They do not include kids camps. Those are regulated under VARA. It's mainly public swimming pools, public access swimming pools, and then that septic program that we have 0 written for. That's if you're inspecting septic hauling vehicles, which we don't do.
Just to be clear, administration, we don't have any, we're not linked with any Iran businesses, right? Because 22 Iran Sanctions Act, by signing this agreement, the grantee is certifying that it is not an Iran-linked business.
No.
Okay. I think we're good then.
Yeah, we kind of chuckled over that one too. Figured that was an older requirement that the state still has on the books, and
Do you have a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll support it.
The only comment here, in line with your Iran prohibition, it's interesting, the state of Michigan has no prohibition on communist China, which they deal
That's
with
true.
every day of the week.
Yep.
But they want to make sure we're not getting water supplies from Iran.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Okay, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carried.
thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, brings us to community corrections. Item number 7, request to approve change notice number 1 to the fiscal year 2023 grant amount with BOC to reflect a $30,000 decrease.
Good morning, everyone. Any questions? Basically, that it's just lapse money. The state asks it back. If it was back any county in the region or it's just money we weren't going to use. The state takes it back to give it to other community corrections providers that are overutilizing their money. So it doesn't affect anything, no programming, no editing, no anything.
This is a prime example of how you don't always have to spend all the money that you get.
Well,
you're giving it back.
I would like to spend it all.
Very noble.
Hopefully next year we will be the ones asking for more money. So again, with that. Any questions on that?
Is the motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the Department of Corrections give back grant for $30,000.
Or any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, mental health, item number 8, request to approve the proposed budget amendment.
You have the amendment in front of you, gentlemen. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Okay. On the whole budget here, what are the significant changes?
In terms of amount, we've increased our Blue Cross billing by $50,000 this year overestimated, which is good news. Our earned contracts are up $85,000. Those are contracts that we have with generally other counties to provide services to their residents who are living in Lapeer. And then if you go down, get my phone oriented correctly. Next sheet. You'll see a 92,000 increase in building repairs. That's primarily because we're renovating the office space behind the county. Did some renovations that you approved a couple weeks ago.
What's the total amended amount? That you're coming from?
That's hard to say from this sheet because it lumps revenue and expense all in the same total. So it doesn't look at it from a, what's increased in revenue, the bottom of the sheets total it all. And I don't have that.
Right?
Pardon me?
If you look at the budget decrease, the request decrease and increase, the difference is 254,000.
Correct, but that lumps, the way the sheet is structured, the county sheet, revenue increases and expense increases are all added together. So it's the totals at the bottom of the form are skewed because of that. You'd have to separate the revenue from the expense.
It's an increase. It's an increase of $127,000.
Okay. Make a motion? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. Okay, number 9, administration, BOC finance, we have a request to authorize shipment or authorize payment to ship and forwarding for labor rated services through August 31st.
I'll support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item B, request to adopt a revised training registration and overnight travel policy. Good morning.
Good morning. So, looking over, the meal reimbursement rates that we have in place, it looks significantly low to what cost actually is. So we did a research with the General Services Administration, it's a government body that, does the averaging of the cost of various products and services throughout the entire country and then gives you the demographic layout. So currently, we reimburse employees when they're traveling, out of county to either a conference or training, up to $8.50 for breakfast, up to $8.50 for lunch, and up to $19 for dinner. The average in the state of Michigan, according to the GSA, which is nationally followed, instead of $8.50 for breakfast, the average cost is $14 throughout the state. For lunch, instead of being $8.50, it's $16. And for dinner, instead of being $19, it's up to $29. So I didn't go up to those actual, my proposal isn't asking me to go up to those actual numbers, so I just want to make it a little closer to what the average cost is in the state of Michigan. So my proposed numbers here, instead of $8.50 for breakfast, it would be up to $12. Instead of $8.50 for lunch, it's up to $14. Instead of $19 for dinner, it's up to $25. Of course, we encourage all employees to be as frugal and mindful as possible when they're traveling. Also, depending where they are in the state and also who they're having lunch or dinner with, if they're meeting colleagues in their field or whatever, so on and so forth, we want to be able to at least compensate them with their reimbursed for what they're actually going to have to spend at that menu. We don't want them to take money like out of pocket for basic meal if we can avoid that. So that's mine.
I have 2 points on this one. First, procedural. An issue that we've got with the commissioners over the last number of months is that things come to us before they've gone to a committee. And oftentimes kind of forces us to act without having the benefit of committee recommendation. This is a significant policy change. As chairman of the policy committee, I really think it should be referred to the policy committee to take a look at before we just jump into it. The second issue I wanted to raise is there's no quantification. We're raising these rates, we're raising the mileage. What does this mean to the budget? What's the impact going to be? I'm not trying to be cheap about it, but I think we as commissioners need to know, are we voting on an extra $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year? Almost none, and I have no clue at this point as to what the budget implication is. So I would move that we would refer this matter to the Policy and Procedures Committee for review, and then have it come back.
I'll support that.
Any discussion? I agree with that. That's
Okay, sure.
a good place to start.
We will provide those numbers as to what the total cost is.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Moses.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, brings us to old business, number 10, camera cabling bid project for the sheriff's department. To be referred from the 824 ARPA committee for further discussion and action. There's a motion. Motion support for discussion.
I'll support.
Motion support, any discussion?
I'd like to just weigh in a little bit on this, kind of going back to the previous motion that, or point that Commissioner Howell made regards to these issues going back to committee, or going through a standing committee before they, before they actually come to us. I mean, we revisited this thing, and we back to our ARPA committee, we discussed it. Didn't have a whole lot of time to go over a ton of things that actually happened that we weren't aware of in Park City. So, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of things that I think that committee or commissioners should have sat in on through a standing committee, should have gone back to ARPA way before this actually got to the point that it did, and we kind of had to rush it through. So I think at the end of the day, I stand by my position that when things are close, that we give contracts and award these kinds of things to people who are local, like we did in the towing bid, before we give them to a company outside. And I stand by that. And all things being equal, I just think that there was a lot of opportunities missed, and we kind of made a hasty decision. And so I don't support this. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Commissioner Zunder.
So I guess I'd like to comment on that a little bit too. I mean, and I understand your position, and normally I would agree with that. But from what I understand on this particular issue, our professionals were very much not in favor of the other company getting the award anyway. These folks, I guess, impressed our officials quite a lot, and they do quality work. And I think this is something that's a big project that obviously we don't want to have to redo in the future anytime soon. It definitely needs to be done. So I think we should go ahead and get it done.
Commissioner Hall?
Yeah, just a comment. I should agree with Commissioner Nicely about this thing probably wasn't handled the way it should have in terms of the vetting. But it did come back to our ARPA committee the other day that we had a meeting on it, and it's incredibly complex. I mean, it's just incredibly complex. These folks have worked for months to get this thing organized, and I just feel I have to defer to their expertise after listening to the complexity of the camera systems, cabling systems, all the factors that really the Sheriff's Department Jail Administration is uniquely suited to make a decision on. I think it's hard for us as commissioners to second guess, right? So I want to support it, even though I share Commissioner Nisley's concern about it should have been vetted more thoroughly ahead of time.
Looking forward, I think that we've made this point pretty evident that we need to have these things go through the standing committee before they get in and run around the commission here. We get stuff at the last minute when we can properly vet them and sit in on those conversations and have a dialogue.
Okay. Any further discussion? We feel the need for a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, brings us to additional items.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. The first one is going to be our Lapeer County Resolution 2023 R10. Commissioner Hamilton, did you want to discuss that?
No, there's, in Lansing, more, burdens that the bureaucrats and legislators in Lansing want to impose on local residents and local, departments. And, this one is regarding, septic systems. Some of the things in this are concerning. They want to change the definition of septic system to an on-site wastewater treatment system. But one of the things that stands out right off the bat in the Senate version of this proposal is the possible future requirement to connect to available public sanitary sewer systems at the earliest reasonable date, and all in the matter of public health and safety and welfare. But when you have counties like Lapeer, where it's mostly septic systems, you don't have huge municipal water systems and sewer systems throughout the county. These aren't cheap systems to put in. We're talking millions and millions of dollars of cost to put in, to have a countywide sanitary sewer and water system. Our county can't afford to do that. We've had septic systems for decades that, for the most part, are working. I know there could be concerns of wastewater issues near bodies of water, but those things need to be dealt with on an individual case, not this widespread, usual one-size-fits-all thing that that Lansing thinks they want to impose on everybody. Another concerning thing is it requires professional inspections of residential septic systems. I mean, when I have my system pumped in my house, they inspect it as part of that service. But part of this is they want to make sure the inspectors, as part of that process going forward, to also inspect all the connections to the septic system. So we're going to come into your home and inspect all your fixtures, the plumbing going to the system, make sure there isn't anything illegal connected to it, or make sure stuff is, it's basically an intrusion into your home. So it's going to require inspection of the plumbing system to it. It's ridiculous. It also, if you have a piece of property, you got a septic system on it, if you want to build a pole barn or some other building that might not be anywhere near the system on your property, you still have to get a permit to have the septic system inspected for that, and then an authorization to get a construction permit for your building. So you have to go to the health department, or will, if this passes, have to go to the health department every time you want to build a building, have another inspection done. It's more staff on the health department, more of a burden on the county's budgets. Now we got to pay for staffing for inspectors. These inspectors require special training, which may not necessarily even be people that pump systems and excavate systems and install them. Basically render those people not eligible to give their opinion or do these things because they have to go through specialized training. And it's just more top-down stuff from Lansing that we don't need. Our citizens don't need to be paying for extra inspections on top of their normal maintenance. We don't need to be paying for extra staffing for the health department to go out and do these things. It's just ridiculous. So this is a resolution that's been circulating amongst the counties. I thought it was important that we pass it here. So I'm going to go through and read the whole thing here. Whereas there are currently pending in the Michigan legislature certain bills, SB 299, SB 300, HB 4479, and HB 4480, which would impose statewide regulations for the implementation of and maintenance of septic systems. And whereas these bills are presently drafted to require inspection of all systems every 5 years and would impose much greater expenses and work hours on local public health departments. And whereas the bills would dramatically increase the requirements of septic inspectors and make it much more difficult to find, hire, and retain qualified personnel. And whereas the current legislation does not provide a permanent, secure funding mechanism to cover these increased costs, which will invariably be shifted to our local health departments. And whereas the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners recognizes the critical importance of protecting Michigan's water resources, including groundwater, lakes and streams, and other surface waters, but concludes that the bills do not provide a sustainable, financially feasible solution in areas that do not have the benefit of municipal sanitary systems. And whereas soil types vary considerably throughout Michigan, making it difficult to establish generalized one-size-fits-all rules for septic systems. Therefore, be it resolved, the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners opposes SB 299, SB 300, HB 4479, and HB 4480 as introduced, and urges the Michigan legislature to consider the costs to local health departments and residents before adopting changes to the septic provisions of the Michigan Public Health Code. Therefore, be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to all Michigan counties, Michigan Association of Counties, members of the Michigan legislature, and to other stakeholders.
Good motion.
I'll make a motion to approve this resolution.
Support. Any further discussion?
These are unfunded mandates, you know, I mean, how much is this gonna cost? Well, around 40,000 residents in here, some of them are on sewer system, but, yeah, I think the vast majority are placed on a septic system, you know, like $500 every 4 or 5 years it needs to be inspected, do the math on that. Not alone, all the other unforeseen costs that would be associated with this, and there's no way to handle it, so it's gonna be, we're gonna be on the hook for that. It's bad enough that it's a one-size-fits-all, the points Bill made are very valid. I support.
Kathy, do you have a comment?
Just so you know, we have concerns with some of the stuff in the code as well, especially the cost that it can do to the residents themselves, having to put out that money to help those regular inspections. While we, of course, want the public to be safe, I think there's a better way that they need to walk out.
Any further comments?
Is the public at risk now? Like, are they at risk now?
With the septic systems where they are, I think the health department does a very good job on their systems that they are. I just put a new one in, you know, and it's an allergen system, so there's a lot of new stuff coming out there. It's better and it works a lot better, but, you know, except around lakes, and we have a sewer system around Lake Nipissing, not around Lake Lapeer, but there's never been any issues out there with the seepage into the water supply. I would say no.
Commissioner Hall?
Right now, it's the way it ought to be, which is case-by-case enforcement. So if I live next to Truman and his septic is leaking over my property, I can file a complaint and they can follow up on it. So there's an enforcement mechanism, it's just that there's got to be some proof that there's actually a problem. With this new system, they're saying everybody's got to have inspections regardless of whether there's any evidence of a problem. And all the associated costs that the director's talking about.
Solution in search of a problem.
Any further discussion?
It's a local issue. It's a local issue, and all the ground, the soils are all different areas, and it should be dealt with on a local issue, period.
Furthermore, I had to get with Kathy, because a local business contacted me about an issue, and their water has to be tested quarterly, right? So there's already plenty of regulations in place.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Nicely,
Yes.
Commissioner Nass,
Yes.
Commissioner Zender,
Yes.
Commissioner Hagedon,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Howell,
Yes.
Chairman Coleman.
Yes. Motion carried. It brings us to Lapeer County Resolution number 2023-R11. Bill, did you want to expand on that one?
It's another one that's been in the news that, that Lansing's been wanting to regulate gravel mining in the state and take away our local control over that. There are environmental concerns locally. The gravel mining issue is, particularly applies to Metamora, which is in my district, where they want to expand the gravel mining there, but there's, environmental issues there with contamination, that is, ruined people's wells. They're currently working on trying to build a municipal system there, to get people, water there. It's also been issues across the state with, the windmills and the solar farms. And the state of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, they're talking about, taking those decisions away from local governments and handing it over to the Michigan Public Service Commission. We wouldn't get a say locally if or where these projects would be placed. We wouldn't get a say in it. The state just continuously is looking for ways to take away our local say in our communities. Our township boards, our county governments know more about what's going on in Lapeer County than some bureaucrats in Lansing. And so I think it's important that we send a message to these people that we're not going to stand for it. Will it do any good? I don't know, but it's important to stand up and say enough is enough. Stay out of our communities. Stay out of our zoning. Stay out of our decision making. So I drafted this resolution to support that. I'll read it now. Resolution in support of local government control over zoning. Whereas Lapeer County, located in the great state of Michigan, cherishes its rich history and natural beauty and is committed to preserving its unique character. And whereas the residents and businesses of Lapeer County have a vested interest in the responsible and sustainable development of our land, including decisions related to zoning for mining, solar, and wind farms. Whereas local government control over zoning decisions is essential to ensure that the unique needs, values, and concerns of our community are taken into consideration when determining land use policies. And whereas the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of our residents, as well as the long-term environmental and economic activity of our region. And whereas the state of Michigan has considered and proposed legislation that would grant the state government authority to override local zoning decisions related to mining, solar farms, and wind farms. Whereas the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners firmly believes that such legislative actions would undermine the principles of local governance, infringe upon the rights of our citizens, and disrupt the beautifully crafted zoning regulations that reflect the best interests of our community. And whereas we, the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners, are committed to representing the will and best interests of our constituents and to protect and preserve the integrity of local government control over zoning. Now therefore it be resolved that the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners hereby expresses its unwavering support for local government control over zoning decisions, including those related to mining, solar farms, and wind farms. Be it further resolved that the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners opposes any efforts by the state of Michigan to assume control over zoning decisions regarding mining, solar farms, and wind farms within the boundaries of Lapeer County. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be transmitted to the governor of the state of Michigan, members of the Michigan State Legislature, and other relevant state and local officials to convey our firm position on this matter. And be it further resolved that the Lapeer County Board of Commissioners shall actively engage with state legislators as well as regional and local stakeholders to protect the interests and autonomy of our community in matters of zoning.
I'll move adoption of the resolution.
Support, Hagadon. Any discussion?
I think it's a great resolution. I was in the crosshairs of this issue, still somewhat involved in it as on the planning commission over in Metamora. But I lived right in the middle of this, where half my neighbors in my neighborhood had contaminated wells with 1,4-dioxane, along with other things that they won't even want to talk about, PFAS, gas, and everything else. Trying to get municipal water. This is Bill's district now, and he's familiar with it. I still hear a lot about it. It's serious. The American Aggregates Levy Corporation is at every Metamora Township Board meeting and all our planning commission meetings with a camera in the back of the room and a microphone, filming everything and everything we do and say. We've been fighting this battle with them for 30 years, and they just keep on. They can't win the battle, so they go to the legislature and they buy out politicians so we can have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats in Lansing make these decisions on our behalf. When it comes to the solar farms, and as a farmer, Commissioner Howell knows that, the legislature wants 40,000 acres for this renewable energy experiment that they want to do. Of course, 83 counties, nobody's in favor of this. Nobody wants this in their backyard. And so they can't do it, so they might come up with some perverted version of eminent domain and pass that along to elected bureaucrats in Lansing again at NPSC, make those decisions for us. It's wrong, and it's centralized government. This is community decisions. They need to be, these decisions need to be left to our local people in our townships, in our community, in our county. Plain and simple.
Commissioner Howell?
I totally agree with everything Commissioner Nisey just said. This is just outrageous. Whitmer and the other progressives want to jam this green energy down our throat. And as Kevin has pointed out, the locals don't want it. They don't want to have 50 windmills around their house. They don't want to have 2,000 acres of solar stuff around their house for obvious reasons. So the local township gets to work out whatever the compromise might be to make it work. She wants to take it and put it in the Public Service Commission. 3 people appointed by her. They will be able to overrule everybody in Lapeer County to make the people in Ann Arbor happy that think that green energy is wonderful since it's not next to their house. And another thing that we're not thinking about or isn't talked about quite much, you think about the windmills or the solar things being right next to you. It's even worse than that. And then if they get those constructed, how do they get the power from that solar field or that wind farm to the generator, to the distribution facility? They got to build high tension power lines. That's a condemnation process. So you may be 5 miles away. They can come to you and say, we're going to condemn a strip in the middle of your farm because we got to build these transmission lines for this solar field that we've authorized up there. So the thing has got a lot more potential disruption to local people and local property owners than even meets the eye now. Anyway.
Agreed. Any further comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Howell,
Yes.
Commissioner Zender,
Yes.
Commissioner Hagedorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Nisely,
Yes.
Commissioner Mass,
Yes.
Chairman Coleman.
Yes. Motion carried. Brings us to item number 13, front of the court, fiscal year 2024 access and visitation grant.
Morning again, Commissioners. I'm here for you this time to request authorization to approve the access and visitation grant. It's on the renewal of the existing grant. Food permit not to exceed $1,500 to be utilized by a supervisory program in situations where an individual might have domestic abuse or strong substance abuse problems. This would compensate the organization so that they can supervise the child and still permit access to the parent who had a problem while they put that problem under.
There's a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Any
Bill made the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next item is the MERS Division 13 change.
Since that was sort of leading the discussion, and to get the discussion started before, I'm going to make the motion to recommend to the full board to authorize the submission of the request for projection study form to MERS in order to proceed to remove 7 county commissioners from the other elected official position into their own separate defined contribution division, which includes a defined benefit freeze, defined contribution with a conversion option. Further discuss the board of commissioners and further to authorize payment in the amount of $2,100 to MERS for performing the services. Or, I wouldn't have made the motion that way, but that's the way it's got to be technically. Simplistically, we're simply trying to move the discussion down the road in order to potentially take the commissioners out of the lifetime pension system. We need to get this study done and get the cost analysis. That's all this does. It doesn't make a final decision. It just says to MERS, give us the numbers, give us the procedure, and we'll take it up when it comes back to us. To me, it's a really important underlying issue. To me, it makes no sense. We are all part-timers sitting out here. We should not be working toward a government pension for the rest of our lives because we served on the board of commissioners. So anyway, that's the motion, that's the rationale behind it. This is not a final decision, this gets us the information we need to make the final decision.
So essentially it does two things, saves the taxpayers money and it takes away the motivation of people to get involved in politics to get a pension.
Well, to sit here for 30 years, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, to me, these positions ought not to be lifetime positions. There ought to be people coming and going to make sure the public's represented. We're all here volunteering our time to do this job. The day will come when somebody else represents our friends. God bless them. I don't expect people to sit here for 20 or 30 years. If I just run 3 more times, I get a pension. That's a bad incentive. They ought to run for the job because they feel there are things that need to be dealt with as a citizen.
So motion support, any further discussion?
Sure, well, that's.
He goes in Lansing and Washington before we need him here.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Brings us to our last item here would be household recycling, Commissioner Zunder.
Okay, so we've done this the last 2 years. There was a break in doing this in the past, before that, and I think they've been doing it, what, 15 or so years before that?
Yes.
Something along that line?
Yep.
So typically, and they've done it both ways. It's been done twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. That was done, when it was done like that, it was done in different locations. And that's what I would propose that we do. The reason that I want to have this discussion now, and I would like the board to either want to do this or not want to do it, whichever way it is out. The people really like this. And secondly, if we can get these dates out there, the townships and stuff can put them on the tax flows. And it's just going to be a better way for people to know about it. It's one of the complaints that both times I've worked the events, they said that there just wasn't enough, not enough people knew, they found out about it different ways, that sort of thing. So we just want to do it earlier. The company that we use, that we've used the last couple of years anyway, it fills up really fast. So it's hard to get the dates and stuff like that. Doreen has worked a ton on it, so has Jackie. So I would like to, I guess, I don't know if you guys want a motion, if you want to talk about it more, or that sort of stuff. Whatever the board desires, but I guess what I would propose is that we do it once in the spring, once in the fall. My recommendation would be probably like here in the pier somewhere, and then probably the other one at Emily City at the fairgrounds. So I think Lapeer, didn't they use Habitat
They did use Habitat one time, yeah.
facility?
Yeah, and it's free recycling for the Lakeville Township residents at Habitat for Humanity. But if you're making motion, I will support it. Second.
Make the motion.
The motion
Is to do it twice a year. I would say that we would let administration take care of the details of it, as far as locations and times and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you for bringing this up because I know that MSU Extension, I've talked to a couple staff members there, they have been absolutely inundated with phone calls about us getting on board with this. You know, doing it more.
I was amazed at how many, because not only with the household hazardous waste, it's the
Clean sweep.
clean sweep, which is pesticides and herbicides and stuff from farms. I was amazed at the pickup trucks that pulled up there, the whole bed of the truck filled with these like 2.5 gallon jugs, you know, with, you know, they weren't necessarily full, but you know, just plenty of dust and dirt on them where they had been sitting around for quite a while. So, like I say, everybody that went through that thing, both times I've done it, I've never had anything negative. They always thank us for doing it, how appreciative they are of it. I think it's, like I say, a great idea to do for the residents.
It's a great idea. So motion is to do 2 events instead of 1, and then let administration.
Yeah, I've done more about the details of it and stuff.
Okay. Motion and support. Brad, you support that?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioner Zender. Brings us to second public time. Anybody from the public like to comment during the second public time? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the second public time. Brings us to commissioner reports. We have an end here that wants to volunteer to start.
We had our first official broadband committee meeting. We decided on authoring a resolution regarding broadband and its importance, and also authorize drafting of a request for information to put out to broadband companies to gauge interest in using a middle mile project should the county move forward with constructing that. That's about it, other than we did get the engineering report back. And to build that middle mile project does fit within our ARPA dollars, but there's some ideas of partnering with townships to have them kick in some money toward it, save the county some money. I know Mayfield Township has mentioned that they have money set aside their ARPA dollars because they're very interested in the internet project. So that's all I've got.
Congratulations to Dryden Township. They ordered a new fire truck and a new police vehicle this week. So that's about all
I get a couple of things. Courthouse. I think we can all agree that it's important to preserve it. I've had multiple discussions with department heads, people from the public, other elected officials, that we need to do something very, very quickly. This is going to get to a point where it's going to be beyond a feasible cost to repair it. And so we aim to preserve it and use it. Teresa, you had mentioned around $350,000 in increased tax or cost for elections countywide for the 9 days. That's the equivalent to around $40 million statewide. So you can get an idea on what the cost is. So we maybe not any of us in this room voted for proposal one. Is it two? Two? Maybe we didn't vote for it, but collectively as a state we did, and we voted. And if you figure out the cost down in other counties, I'm sure they pay their election workers a little more. So you might safely say that's $45 to $50 million. And who pays for it? We do. We're being taxed to death. Both spouses have to work. We don't even have time to educate ourselves on what we're voting for. And I think that's the important thing to look at is find the time to know what you're voting for. Research the candidates, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. As an example, if you're a Republican, know who you're voting for. Just because somebody says a Republican doesn't mean they're a Republican. How are they voting? Conservative Republicans should be for limited government. Obviously, there's other sides to that people don't agree with. But if that's your hill, then do it. Elect conservative Republicans and know what you're voting for. In 2016, our state legislature voted and paid for $80 million to upgrade our election systems to the Dominion systems that we have now. So after the 2016 presidential election, the taxpayers paid for an $80 million upgrade to the election systems. And now with the 9 days of early voting, we're approaching $50 million. So it's safe to say in the last 7 years, we spent $130 million to vote. It's getting expensive to vote, let alone, provide for our families. The gentleman that was here from MAC, is it Stephen Curry? They talked about implementing the plan or idea of voting remote or doing Zoom calls. I don't know about you, but if you can't make it to this panel here, I don't think you should be able to vote, because it's easy to sit in front of a camera with a sport coat on and in your underwear and not to give everybody too much of a visual, and vote no or vote yes on something. You need to be down here in front of the public, the very people that you're voting, that voted you in, are the ones that want to give their opinion on it. It's easy to sit at home. I don't agree with that whatsoever. If you're going to be an elected official, you need to come in, and everybody needs to vote. If you can't be here, if you're on vacation, well, then you don't get to vote. Another thing here. It's evident that our state really wants to tie us locally, and look at the resolutions that we have to pass. It's evident that they want to take away townships. If they can take away the townships, then they're going to come after us. And who does that leave at the helm? The state government, as Commissioner Hamilton would say, the one size fits all. And that doesn't work. It's never worked. It was never the design of this country. We still live in the greatest country in the world. And I can safely say that probably all of us up here aim to keep it that way and actually improve it. So that's all I have.
I agree with you. The barrage of tyrannical bills coming out of the Senate, you can't even keep up with it. I'd just like to urge everybody to pay attention to all the garbage that's coming out of Lansing, let alone the United States Congress and Senate over there too. But I just want to point out a couple bills, or a few of them that you probably are not even aware of. Now, these may be in committee or just coming out of committee and hit the floor of the House or the Senate, or the legislature of the Senate. Senate Bill 463, talk about forgiving student loans. Those are people sign promissory notes to pay a loan back. And now the taxpayers are going to be on the hook. And Biden's trying to find 6 ways a Sunday to get the taxpayers to pay for somebody else's debt. But to make matters worse, Senate in Michigan, in Lansing, Senate 463 would require students to apply for student loans as a condition of graduating from high school. Unbelievable. And then there's another bill, 4961, would be create an environmental literacy task force to lobby for climate cult indoctrinations in the schools. There's another couple bills here, House Bill 4945 and Senate Bill 471, would strip citizens of their gun rights for being convicted of a misdemeanor. What's next? A civil infraction? This is how they're coming after your firearms. They're just incrementally just coming at you. I'm sure there's people in this room that have been convicted of a misdemeanor. Misdemeanors are not big deals, but they're going to take your guns from you because you've been convicted of a misdemeanor. That is just unconscionable. Last one, you guys kind of mentioned it earlier. House Bill 4956 and Senate Bill 476 would legalize late-term abortion. These are abortions that happen all the way up to the point of birth. I mean, it's just a sickening thought to me. You know, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, I don't know anybody in their right mind that thinks it would be okay to just take the life of a young baby as it's being born. It's just sickening to me. House Bill 4959 and Senate Bill 475 would mandate healthcare insurance, your health insurance, pay for all this, you know, taxpayer funded. House Bill 4949 would codify the right of sexual mutilation, the sexual reassignment surgery of children without the knowledge or consent of their parents. You know, I mentioned this to people. These are actual bills, and they look at you like you have three heads and think that I'm a conspiracy theorist. So it says, go to the Michigan.gov website and look these bills up. They're there. That's what's going on in Lansing. You need to pay attention to what's going on. It's terrible what's coming out. And those are just a few of the things that come out of there that I've picked up on here just the last week. That's all I have to say.
Just two quick things. Moses, if we could get an email update on the towing contracts. My understanding, they haven't been signed or sent to John Miller yet. And then correct me if I'm wrong, because you were sitting up here. Last year, the county commission passed a motion to have a meeting over at the historic courthouse every year. They did that, I believe, in October of last year. Is that something that we're gonna continue?
Was it stated every year? I guess I don't remember that part. I mean, we did it last year. We had a meeting over there. And it was great.
Yeah, I would personally like to see us do that again. It just popped in my head today with the discussion on the historic courthouse. So sorry if I'm just flinging this on you guys. But that is something that I'd like to see us do maybe in October, November.
If I remember right, Commissioner Hagedorn, I think the only drawback to that is the internet issue. So that meeting cannot be, on YouTube. So just keep that in mind. I don't think not having one on YouTube is necessarily a big deal, but that is something to consider.
I agree, I'd like to have a meeting with the historic courthouse.
I remember you had the first October session meeting over there last year.
Is there a way to stream that through like a hotspot on a phone or a computer?
I wasn't involved in the technical stuff last year. I just know Quentin made a decision and that was it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can talk about it with IT.
Well, Commissioner Hagan, do you want to make sure? Because I would like to see that happen too. I just don't want it to get too far along to where the year's over. And
So
it's a good tradition.
if there's no objections from any of you colleagues of mine, I'd like to get with Buildings and Grounds, and I'll get with Moses as well, and then I'll report back at our full board meeting in September.
I would suggest doing maybe a committee of the whole meeting over there instead of a full board. If you want to live stream on one, that would be probably the more connected live stream.
If you can't live stream, then why not just, you can record it and then you can upload it into YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, you really only just missing an hour or two or whatever, is that the live streaming thing, whether it's live or a couple of hours delayed, you're getting it out there so the public can see it and they can review it. It's on our website. It's always good.
I don't know if we have the equipment to do that, Isaiah. I'm not that tech savvy when it comes to that stuff, so.
I'm not
Hang on, is he the youngest one here?
Well, I'm not as Jackie and our administration can tell you, I barely know how to turn on our iPad, but I digress. So if it's okay with the board, I'll get with Buildings and Grounds and administration and then give a report back and maybe make a motion or discussion at our next full board for one of our October meetings, whether it's committee of the whole or full board. Is that okay with the board?
I'm good with that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Michelle?
Yeah, I want to report on two meetings. We talk about government all the time here and how the government's trying to do everything. I had occasion to meet with two organizations that are non-governmental, that are doing a lot of good work in the county. first one, Commissioner Mass, Commissioner Coleman were there. Was also our annual meeting of the Farm Bureau on the Hankley Farm in my district in Burnside Township. Farm Bureau does a host of things of education for kids, all kinds of programs that don't cost taxpayers one red cent. And it's a very small, anyway, they had their annual meeting and it went very well. I think they appreciated that we had some commissioners present to show an interest in it. The other meeting I attended was last night at the American Legion here in Lapeer. Again, a private organization of veterans. They are working toward a grant to the state of Michigan, which would make the Legion Hall here in Lapeer a gathering point in the case of natural disasters, whether it be fire, outages, whatever. The potential is they have a large generator facility, heating and cooling, all the kind of thing, large kitchen, the kind of things you need if there was an unforeseen disaster. So they're pursuing that. We don't know the answer until November, but I'm pleased that it's a private organization pursuing that in the city, as opposed to us as a government doing everything. They're stepping up to the plate. It's pretty encouraging. So those are my two things to report on. One minor comment. I agree with the chairman. When I was in the legislature, I voted against every bill that allowed for remote participation in meetings. I think if I am elected to the County Board of Commissioners, I need to be here. To sit at home looking at a screen, I can't gauge the opinions of the folks near as well as seeing them in person, talking to them in person, and seeing each of us in person. It's too easy to dodge responsibility if you're acting remotely. So that's all I have.
Well said, yeah. Okay, administrator and CFO updates?
Yeah, we do have one. So you each received today a copy of our drafted budget. So we like to encourage all 7 of you, whether you want to do it individually or small groups, if you have questions about the budget, to meet with us at any time between now and the next meeting. You know, just to be very frank about it, this is the nuts and bolts of everything you discuss. It's the dollar and cents of everything we do. So even if you want to come in and micromanage one part of the budget, Jackie won't be happy about it, but she'll still answer your questions. No, I'm totally kidding. But you just drill in on anything and ask us anything. We're happy to help you. And we're here. So I know that the run-on sheets could be cumbersome with all these numbers, and you want to just trust us to handle it, but we'd love to hear your questions and your critique. So feel free to make appointments with us. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Okay.
Yep, that's good.
Need motions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned.
Exactly. Carol laughed.